What's up? What's up?
Everything good?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
dude, this day.
Yeah.
This day.
Robert's in. Hey, Robert, nice to meet you. We're going to get started here in about 5 minutes. Looks like we have some other panelists coming in. Hi, Matt.
Hello. How are you all?
Good.
Good.
We'll get started here in like 5 minutes.
Sweet.
Josh, Robert is Brandon.
Oh, gotcha.
So I don't know if we switch them over or what the best way to do that. Roscoe,
Let's see.
Jorge, Gregory, welcome, guys. Last
Robert.
I checked, we had, I think, 12 people signed up.
Awesome.
So
Robert, check your Bowling Green email. I just resent you the panelist link. That'll let you actually jump in here on the presenter side.
Oh, he's in. I just promoted him to
perfect.
panelist. So
Awesome.
He should be good.
Good deal.
I love all the work from home setups that everyone has.
My wife and I share an office, so that's like her craft stuff that she likes to do over there. And this is like my gaming station right here that I'm on. So
That's awesome. Now, JCPS and Bowling Green, do you guys both still have school this week?
We've ended on Tuesday.
Awesome.
we students end on the 27th, teachers end on the 28th, and I'm done on June 1st. So it kind of staggers a little bit.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got to get Seth in here still. I run a wood-fired pizza food truck as my side job, I guess, and it's our first day today. So
Cool.
getting back
That's
into it.
awesome.
There's a nice background change.
A little better.
Albert, welcome. Glad you guys can make it. Ryan, welcome. Just wait. We have one more panelist that's going to join us. Seth, he might be a minute or two late, but in a minute here, we'll get Josh to throw up the slideshow and kind of go over who each one of us are and why I had chosen this to be the panel. And then we can kind of just get into some eSport discussion. There is a chat at the bottom, you guys, if you guys want to chime in at all or ask any questions, or you guys want us to focus on any specific topics while we kind of banter back and forth. And I don't know that we're going to do many polls during this, but yeah, Q&A, chat, both open. We'll be monitoring that throughout the whole time, and I'm excited. I appreciate everyone joining.
I'm digging all the wood in the back of your house there, Tanner. It's nice.
Thank you. I live up in the Northwoods in Minnesota. Yeah, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of Kentucky in a lot of ways. I love, like, Kentucky almost feels like a whole different area of the country than I've ever visited, though, because of the rolling and green, beautiful hills everywhere. It almost looks like Avatar a little bit in some places. I don't know. It's beautiful out there. I always tell my wife if we're ever to move, then Kentucky's at the top of my list.
I like it a lot. I used to live in Niagara Falls, so it's
Yeah.
I much prefer Kentucky to the Rust Belt. So.
No, that's awesome. Well, let's see. Welcome, Tyler. Good to see you, man. Now we got Seth here.
Hey.
Perfect. Justin, thanks for joining, man. We're up to 14. I think this is pretty much everyone that was on our initial invite list, and we might have some people joining in between to ask some questions and stuff. But Josh, you still there? Can you share the PowerPoint?
Yep, sure can.
Cool.
Let's do...
Albert, I'm glad that you can hear us. We cannot hear you, so maybe the chat is the best way to go about that. Yeah, well, welcome everyone. I'm Tanner Duncan. I'm the account rep for Kentucky. I've been working with Kentucky schools now for, I don't know, coming up on a year. A couple weeks back, I just had this idea to try to get as many people that are working and thinking and talking about esports in Kentucky together, and used some people that have both bought some product from us and some people that are doing some really great things in Kentucky, and just tried to get us all together to have a good conversation about it. So yeah, I live up in Minnesota. The week of Kisti, I think a lot of you guys might have came and seen me at the booth. I don't know if I got it at Kisti or if I got it traveling after that, but I came down with COVID, so I was out for almost the entire month of the rest of March and all of April. So really happy to finally be back, and I don't know, maybe it's Louisville, but I can't wait to get back out there. So that's a little bit about me, and for joining.
Hi, everybody. My name's Josh Knutson. I'm the one panelist that doesn't have a working webcam on their laptop, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm the Esports and VR Solutions Director over at Bytespeed. I'm a former collegiate coach. I started in the program at the University of Jamestown in North Dakota. Back when there was just 20 varsity level college teams. We started back in 2016. And I ran that program until about a year ago when I made the transition over to Bytespeed. And, you know, my role over a program and helping with my connections, still in the community at the high school and college level, and a little bit in professional ranks in kind of industry sides of things. I also serve on the advisory board for the National Coaches Association. So, you know, on esports, it's exciting to see, you know, states like Kentucky being leaders, and I'm happy to be here. So with that, I'm going to flip things over to Seth with Play Versus.
Hey everyone, so my name is Seth Reinhardt. I player experience managers. Before that, I was actually an IT director and esports coach in the Play Versus League. I worked at Martha Lane Collins High School in Shelbyville, where I was actually born. So I a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the program, and Play Versus thought I was either really good or really annoying. So they picked me up, and I moved out of the small town of Shelbyville to now Los Angeles, where I've been for the last year. My job is to help schools kind of navigate creating their program and all the facets of that. So happy to share any experience from either side of the equation, and always happy to work with folks back home.
Yeah, the Wookiee. No. My name is Brennan Stansbury. I work for Bowling Green City Schools in the technology department. I helped get our esports team started. We started in the fall and got equipment from Bytespeed and secured funding and all that good stuff. And then the main contact for making all that stuff work. So I've been doing it a little bit for a little while. So.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Bolka. I work for Jefferson County Public Schools in Louisville, and I am the, my official title is Digital Innovation Leader, but I'm also the Esports Director for the district. So I started as an esports coach at Thomas Nelson High School in Bardstown, and then moved to Jefferson County this past year. We've gone from 2 teams to 16, which has been really awesome. And I saw one of our coaches and the participants, Ryan Deal from Butler High School. So yeah, I work with schools, and I've worked with Seth a little bit at Play Versus, and I've worked with really I've been at the table with everybody on this panel at some point. I'm also a Play Versus super coach, so if you're not if you don't have any sports program yet, you're probably going to be getting an email from me this summer on signing up. So it's good to be here.
Thanks, guys. So I think, we're going to keep things really light and focus a lot on discussion and back and forth, and absolutely answering questions from, those that are attending today. But I did want to just cover kind of the state of esports in Kentucky, both at the high school, and just briefly touch on the college communities, and then go into, advice on how you actually get started. Go through some of the key areas when you're launching specifically a high school program, because we've got some great experts in that regard here, and then cover some common challenges and maybe offer some solutions, and then, like I said, absolutely have a good chunk of Q&A for those of you that are in the chat. So please feel free to type out questions if you have them, and we'll get to them at the tail end of the conversation. And, all of our contact information and the slides and all that will be made available afterwards. You can certainly reach out if we don't get to your question today. But we have an hour set aside to do the webinar today, so hopefully we get to everything. With that, I think we're just going to go real briefly, talk about a broad overview for high school and college in the state. Like I said, Kentucky's been a big leader in the esports space, definitely at the high school level, and there's absolutely some college opportunities for scholarships for your high school students that want to follow into the next level. So what I did is just kind of real briefly, before I let Seth and Matt and Brandon or Robert, go through and talk more about the high school side. I just got a list of the varsity level programs or the larger collegiate universities that have esports teams up and running at the various levels, everything from Brescia University down to Murray State. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of leaders, when you look at Pikeville and, Western Kentucky, and Brescia, certainly some of the earliest esports colleges, and then University of Kentucky with what they're doing at a very large scale with partnerships with some of the professional organizations. So there's a lot going in on the college side, but we've got some high school experts here, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys. And Seth, maybe you can give us a broad overview of what Play Versus is doing in Kentucky, and then Matt and Robert, if you want to talk about how things are going at the local level and in your teams, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll give a little bit of like a history and kind of an up to speed on where we're at kind of from a global perspective, so to say, in Kentucky. So Kentucky was one of the first states to participate in the KHSA sanctioned Season Zero, with one title in the lineup being League of Legends. I was a Season Zero coach along with Matt. It was definitely kind of a pinch me moment, as you know, one of those kiddos that grew up pretty unengaged in the school community. You know, I'd always spent a lot of time in gaming and wondered, you know, man, this would be really great in high school, but never in a million years did I think it would come to Kentucky. But um, it's actually, you know, one of our bigger states currently, as you can see with the 300 schools either competing or on the wait list. You know, there's definitely a lot of need out there. The students are definitely interested. I mean, I think statistically right now, 70% of adolescents would identify as a gamer. So, but I think there's a really important distinction to make between gaming and esports. So, you know, while they're contextually related, they're not exactly the same thing. So gaming might be what, you know, you would consider to be an isolated pastime, whereas esports is a competitive team environment where, you know, players are utilizing a lot of those same life skills they would learn in traditional sports like basketball or football with, you know, collaboration, teamwork, critical thinking. And it's something that they could tie to a career path or higher education through college. As you can see, there's a bunch of colleges here. And Kentucky is growing very, very rapidly, and we're looking to really ramp that up. You know, obviously, esports is kind of one of the only activities that can really take place right now. Obviously, we're respecting the KHSA mandated dead period, but we do hope to, at the very least, provide some semblance of an activity or community experience that students can engage in. So, which I think is a great segue for Matt, if you want to jump in and kind of talk about some of the experiences, you know, that you might have had as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been really awesome to see how the esports landscape has changed. So Seth was talking about Season Zero. There were 18 teams, I think, participating in that point. That's not even 18 schools because there were multiple teams for some schools. And now we're looking at, I think it's got to be over 100 teams. And I think I counted like 60 to 70 schools or something like that just for League of Legends. So it's been really awesome watching that grow. We have here in Jefferson County, we have, I don't even know, 16 schools that are participating through Play Versus, or some have decided to do club competition through some other offerings. But Play Versus has worked really well with us to make sure that it's affordable. They're constantly doing things like giving away like the possibility to earn free season passes and things like that. But from the coach side of things, it's really, I think the most important thing is to take it seriously. Like your staff and your coworkers and your students are going to take it as seriously as you do. So being really intentional about how you practice, about how like the standard that you hold your kids to. I decided when I first started coaching that I thought it was more important to hold my esports athletes to a higher standard than the other ones in my school. So that meant more stringent requirements on grades, and attendance, and we had things at our school called care forms, and they were like lunch attention referrals, and they couldn't have more than 2 of those in a week or they weren't going to compete for me for the next week. And so holding a high standard is super important, I think, as the sport grows and as we try to turn people onto the side of it. It's important to think about things like working out, which I had my players do before every practice. We ran, we did push-ups, sit-ups, sometimes we played dodgeball. Getting parents involved and making sure that they're on the same page. And yeah, it's really important to take it just as seriously as any other sport would be taken. So I hope that answered kind of what you were thinking along the lines of there.
Yeah, no, that was great.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big thing is to that you should consider is kind of, you know, a lot of people might be scared to jump in as a coach or a sponsor because they don't feel like they're, you know, as knowledgeable as they should be to actually be a coach. But you know, what we're really looking for is just a staff member or school approved volunteer that is willing to just provide an opportunity to the students and be a positive adult role model. You know, obviously gaming experience is certainly helpful, but we're really looking for someone that's just kind of there to prop the kids up. I promise you that they'll be waiting for you at the door for practice, and they'll be, you know, talking to each other about how they can improve. And you're going to see a lot of stereotypes, you know, as far as demographics and groups kind of get shattered. So, you know, you're going to see those kids that maybe they participate in football in the fall and esports in the spring, or, you know, maybe you have a kid that's never once thought about stepping onto a field. So, you know, just keep an open mind, and you'll see a lot of students, you know, be self-starters and be very motivated to step up and carry the program. And I think that's really what was rewarding for me as a coach, you know, enough so that I walked away from, you know, my career and my small quaint town of Shelbyville to live in Los Angeles to do this at a national level. So it's either good or I'm crazy. So you can take your pick, but it's I think it's awesome.
Yeah, just bouncing off what Seth said, like I would say most of the esports coaches I know are not experienced with one or both of the games. Like even as a coach myself, I focus more on League of Legends than Rocket League, but like he said, like just the willingness to build those relationships with students, because that's what it's really about. And if we think about how, I mean, so much data and so many studies are out there that show, like, you know, there's so many benefits to students feeling connected and like they belong to people at their school. And esports is just, it's going to get so many kids that would never feel connected or feel like they belong in another way. So.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, so no, those are great points, guys. Brandon, why don't you touch base a little bit about what's going on at Bowling Green? Brandon had he came to me, and one of their goals was to be one of the top teams in the state in Rocket League, and it was important to them to have good machines. And if you don't mind me sharing a little bit of a story, Brandon got all of his machines from ByteSpeed, and his first impression of us was, well, none of the machines were able to run the game. And after some troubleshooting and all that, I'll kind of let you touch on that a little bit, Brandon, but we got things working and it seems to be going in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah. So let's see, I am unmuted, right? Yep. All right. So yeah, we were working on trying to get esports started. We finally got approval to get funding. We got in contact with Tanner to order some machines. We spec'd out pretty decent machines because with Rocket League, it's a little different than League of Legends. The hardware matters, the refresh rate matters because it's tied to how it actually refreshes. So the 240 hertz really helps. And it gives it a little bit of an edge. And so we got the machines in, started testing them, and it would stutter. It was just like making noise. It would stutter, do weird stuff. And we were testing offline. So we're like, okay, what's going on? Well, call up Tanner. He gets the people that actually set up the machine to do a test bench identical to ours, our build in their lab, and try to start troubleshooting. They send us ideas. You know, being technology, we did some things. And come to find out, for whatever reason, Steam our network was still blocking some stuff on the firewall. Steam couldn't download the picture for us who were logged in. Because of that, it was causing the GPU to like spike through the roof for no reason. So you'd be playing fine for like 10 seconds and then it would just stutter. And so all because Steam couldn't download that little picture, it caused an issue. Well, we've resolved that and was not a hardware issue. But, you know, our first thing was, oh God, we just spent, you know, all this money on these machines and they don't work. So luckily that wasn't the case. And but Tanner and his team were great to work with. They were with us every step of the way. I mean, they worked late. They they did everything they could to make sure we were able to get the machines together and in place on time. So it was a great experience working with Lightspeed. We priced with all the other vendors on the CATS contract. No one can come close to the quality of machine at the same price point. And the people that are building the machines know the gaming computers. It's not like your normal rep at the other vendors that have no idea what you're trying to do. So that really helped for us. So
I think that's a really good segue to kind of move into, you know, some of the things when you're building out a program of how you get started. You know, Brandon, you guys just got off the ground. Matt, you've been going since season 0. But I think, you know, we all have different things that pop up and different challenges that arise. And, you know, the next 2 sections of the webinar, I guess, kind of deal with those types of scenarios. So, you know, I'd love if you guys both would, you know, chip in here, and Seth, you two definitely talk about, you know, these common, you know, areas where I think are really important in getting teams off the ground. And let's just start with, you know, pitching the concept and the idea. You know, we all got into esports for one reason or another. But it's one thing to get, you know, a coach motivated or students motivated. It's another thing to convince a school board to spend all that money on equipment, or, you know, to make those decisions to move forward with a new sport. So, you know, if you guys wanted to talk on that and kind of how did you get started? How did you pitch the idea and talk to your admin and your school board about getting esports off the ground?
Sure. I'll kind of kick the conversation off. So, you know, obviously we live in a really, you know, great time as far as, you know, information and education around, you know, choices that we can make for buying habits and activities that, you know, our kiddos can participate in. So I did a ton of research, you know, before I even jumped into pitching, you know, anyone. So my story is a little bit funny, so I'll kind of share it. So, you know, I was the IT director for the school, was doing a tech run. Someone's, you know, keyboard wasn't plugged in, whatever the case may be. So walking through the hallway, and a colleague of mine stops, and he knew that I was pretty big into gaming and stuff. So he said, "Hey man, did you hear that esports is now a sanctioned sport in Kentucky?" And I'm like, "Man, you're pulling my leg. There's no way in a million years that, you know, esports is going to be in Kentucky." He's like, "No, man, like here." He shows me his phone, and sure enough, there's the press release. So this all kind of coincided with that research that I was doing, and so I was like, wow, this, you know, this is a sign. So I ran to the athletic director, and I introduced myself for the first time. I said, "Hey, my name is Seth Reinhardt. We're going to play esports." And he kind of looked at me and, you know, gave me the eyebrow, and he's like, what? I've never even heard of that. So what I did is, you know, I did a little bit of education, you know, some slight arm twisting, and wanted to make sure that there was a direct correlation, you know, between stuff that the administrators understood. So, you know, I showed him the viewership numbers for the League of Legends World Championship, which is on par with the Super Bowl, which everyone knows how big the Super Bowl is. So, you know, I think it's important to kind of to help them grasp the landscape and how big this is. You know, being in IT, I had a few tools at my disposal that not everyone does, but, you know, I'm sure if there's any teachers or educators on the call here today, you've definitely heard, you know, kids talking about gaming or seen them consuming the content on their phones at lunch, whatever the case is. So I think kind of presenting it to the administration that this is a way to, you know, take something that's already here and put some guardrails around this and channel it in a positive direction. So this isn't a build it and they will come. It's they're here, and we need to steer it in the right direction. And I want to kind of preface something, you know, with Play Versus. So we've got quite a few educators on my team, and there's a lot of education pillars that kind of steer a lot of our decision making. So, you know, in the education realm, you know, accessibility, inclusion, you know, is very important. And that's something that really, resonates with us and our mission. So, a game like League of Legends, it's free to play, but there is what's called microtransactions in the game, and those cost money or time. And so since we've partnered with the game developers themselves, specifically Riot Games in League of Legends case, we can provide what's called Champion Unlock. So this is exactly what it sounds like, in that it unlocks every character in the game for every player to utilize, so that everyone's on the same playing field, and a student's socioeconomic standing isn't going to dissuade them or inhibit their ability to perform. So, and that extends to every game, in the lineup. And that's ultimately why I pitched the admin team on using Playversus, because of those partnerships with the developers and the state association. So those are just some initial things to think about, when kind of presenting this to your admin.
Yeah, just to bounce off what Seth said, I was very lucky in that my admin and my athletic director were very progressive. So it didn't really take any convincing at all. I worked with my athletic director on, we shared a class called, it was a student organization council. So it had one rep from every sport and club in the school. So it was our student council essentially, but it was our first period class. And so we worked very closely together, and he was all in on it. He actually gave me a startup fund of $500 from just the general athletic fund, which I thought was really cool. So we used that to pay for some jerseys and some equipment, and some league fees and stuff like that. But really, I had a gaming club at my school, and at a school of 700 kids, I had around 45 every Wednesday that would show up to my room to play video games and Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. And so I knew the positive impact that it would have on my students by doing something like this. As soon as you can bring that to the perspective of kids and how it's going to affect them, and you get some of their testimonies on there as well on how much that would impact them, that would be huge in pitching it to an admin or to a school board. And one of the things when I'm talking to schools, what I also do is I'll research like who their rivals are, and I'll be like, like the school down the road, they beat you at basketball and football this year, and they have an esports team. So what are you guys going to do to beat them there? So most of your athletic directors are going to be competitive and want to be better. So that's a little way that I kind of put some fire under them too. So.
So for us, it was about 3 years in the making. We started talking to our new athletic director whenever he started about it, and then got our superintendent on board. And then it came down to kind of a juncture when they announced when they had the first Rocket League championship last year, and there was a tweet about it. Our ex-soccer coach tweeted that he was going to help us go to win that the next season, and so he had some kids sign up, or the one interested. So we with him went to the board and super, and were able to get funding and get that going. So we were actually able to fulfill that. We ended up in the Final Four, but didn't make it quite to the championship our first season, but we'll hopefully do better in the fall. So
that's a really great point. And I think Bytespeed will have some really good insights into this as well. But esports also presents like a really interesting kind of springboard for STEM integration and STEAM integration, through various technology pathways. So I was very fortunate to be able to partner alongside our project lead, the way teacher. He was our assistant coach, and we used that lab for our program. But he had a grant that he came to me and he said, "Hey man, I have some money and I have to spend it. So, what do you got?" And I said, "Well, I'm a professional money spender. So let's see if we can't put together a machine that has VR capabilities, and let's show the admin team what we can do with virtual reality, and we can also use that machine for streaming our games to help promote the esports program." So we put together this machine, brought the superintendent into the room, and we took him on a tour of the White House, and we never left the classroom. And he took that headset off and he looked over at us and he said, what's it going to cost to get 20 labs in, the district? So, there's a really great springboard to integrate esports, into, some semblance of curriculum and tech. And, heck, you could even get the kiddos to jump in and help build and stuff like that. So just something to think about, as you're planning.
One of the things that we're working on is trying to find people to do the announcement for our stream and kind of do the broadcasting part, because that's just a big part of this as the players playing the game. There's looking to be scholarships and opportunities both at the collegiate level and beyond for those people. And it's not every day you get to go into sports broadcasting in high school. So.
Yeah, that's another great point. And, Twitch is like a household name just in respects to gaming and kids, if you ask them what their dream job is nowadays, it's no longer an astronaut. It's, I want to be a Twitch streamer. So, if you can provide them some semblance of partaking in something that they're really passionate about and include, the academic, eligibility aspects of that, that's a recipe for success, I think. So that's a great point.
We have some comments and stuff going on in the chat. It looks like some of Warren's points were talked about. Ryan Deal at Butler Traditional said he had a CTE and IT pathway and connected esports as a part of that CTE pathway. That's one of the most popular ways that we see schools across the country getting funding. That virtual reality comment is really kind of an awesome point. Kentucky, in terms of what ByteSpeed does, Jefferson County has put a lot of money into virtual reality, but they've done the standalone units and not the ones that are tethered to rigs. So it's hard to do the dual purpose that way. But a lot of other states are using it for CAD labs or, AP coding or whatever it ends up being, and then using those for gaming rigs at the end of the day. And then we have a couple more, and maybe this was just touched upon, but Gregory Clark said, our biggest issue is what seems to be a disconnect between the permissions needed to connect to a game online from the lobby in Rocket League versus the permissions KDE allows. We actually have to bus our kids to the public library to play.
Gregory, I'm a part of the IT staff for our department. There's ways around that. You just have to put them in the magic IP range. If your IT people want to talk to me or somebody about my department, we can show them how to set permissions so that either via a login, we have a script for our machine so that when a particular login is entered, it switches their IP address to a static IP range. And if you're in the static IP range, then you bypass the firewall rules. We still have them filtered through Lightspeed, but we bypass those firewall rules, which are what stops a lot of that. And we're the ones that actually have those usernames and passwords. We have one per machine, and like I said, the script flips it over, so we can actually use the machines for other things during the day. And they can't get onto Steam or play games or anything like that while that's going on. So if you want to get in touch with me, we can send that over, or we can talk to your IT people about helping you get around that so you don't have to play at a library.
That's awesome. I think, we've kind of been talking a little bit about facility stuff and kind of, internet PCs, how to get extra funding. So I think the next one that I'd like for you guys to talk about is kind of this day-to-day, what does actually running a program look like? What does coaching look like? What does practices look like? Talk us through what you guys are doing and kind of like, if you had to pick like your best practices guide and keep it to 5 minutes, what would you guys kind of say, offering advice for those new coaches or, people that are maybe tapped on the shoulder to run a program, but don't know what League of Legends is. That's a pretty common scenario across the board, no matter where you're at. It's, a passionate educator who wants to, give this opportunity to the kids in the school, but maybe doesn't have a ton of game knowledge or coaching experience. So If you can talk about kind of what your day-to-day looks like, and maybe, what does competition look like for you guys, and kind of like your 5-minute best practice guide.
Yeah, I don't mind to start that one. So with Play versus League of Legends is played on Tuesdays, and Rocket League is played on Thursdays. We chose to focus on League of Legends more, so we didn't have any machines that actually ran Rocket League when I was coaching, so that was we just didn't play that one, which was fine. So we practiced 3 days a week. We practiced on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesdays were competition, and Friday was an optional day. Like, you can come in, play around, like, do whatever you want. We started off every practice, like I said earlier, with working out. We spent about 20 to 25 minutes. So school got out at 2:25, 2:35. We started practice at 3. So I gave the kids 25 minutes to get ready. Workout started at 3. Then we take a few minutes to cool down. We walk up to our computer lab. 3:30, we get logged in. If it was a Monday, we would spend some time kind of strategizing about what we were going to do for the game on Tuesday. So most of the time, like, our opponent was up, we knew the characters they played, so we did some scouting and we talked through like a game plan, what we wanted our draft to look like, and a bunch of different scenarios of that. Then we'd play. We'd either have them queue up together, five people, and play against some random people online, or I had 10 people on my team, so we would do a scrimmage. But that was kind of hard because I had like 5 really good players and 5 not that great players. So the scrims never really worked out as we hoped, and somebody would always end up mad. So Tuesdays were competition days. The students would bring in a few dollars for pizza. So they'd bring in like $2 or $3 for pizza. We'd order some Pizza Hut, and I'd have that delivered for about like 30 minutes before game started. Wednesdays would come in, and I would hook my laptop up to one of the big smart boards that we had, and we would look through film, and I'd stop it, and we'd draw on there like where some of the mistakes were and things like that, some of the things we wanted to focus on. And then we focus on those things. Thursday, we do the same thing. We focus on some other issues and talk through some things. We'd spend some just quality time together. And then Friday was optional. They didn't have to show up. They would just kind of play around. I also had some kids that were competing in a different league with Rocket League, so they weren't going through Play versus. They were going through a different one because they had consoles. And they would be down in a different room, which is kind of unfortunate. But they would do the same workouts and everything with us, but then they would. I had my own schedule that I did with them that was pretty much the same. So, and then really just utilizing like Google Sheets for like a scouting report on who, if you have your players go through, or you can do it, or you guys can do it together, and just look at who they played previously, how they did. It's kind of hard to tell some of their tendencies from some of the data that you can find, but anything you can get to kind of keep track of week to week is awesome. So.
Yeah, for us, well, the main thing is for new coach, you don't have to know the game. The kids know the game. Treat it like any other coaching experience. That was a big thing for our kids was, make sure you're on practice on time. Don't skip out. Don't those kind of things. Because some of the kids were more dedicated than others. For us, me, myself, and 2 of the members of my tech team, they were champ 1, champ 2, and so we would play a team against the starters and scrimmages on Tuesdays, and then our main practice was Tuesdays, and then we'd have games on Thursdays. We're looking to do League of Legends starting back when we start back to school in the fall, hopefully, and so they're going to practice Monday game and with the game on Tuesday. Rocket League's going to practice on Wednesday, the game on Thursday, and then we're going to switch out on Fridays probably. Of course, the kids can play and practice outside of school, but as far as structured practice, that's what we're going to do because we have a lot of 8 machines, so we have enough to do one or the other, not both at the same time. So, but good stuff.
So I wanted to jump in on what Matt and Robert were talking about because I think it's really great. So. If you have game knowledge, that's certainly awesome, and you can leverage that to help grow the kids' their skill sets and all that stuff. So But what's awesome about esports is that there's a ton of other, resources out there. So like League of Legends, for example, on Monday, we would sit down, make sure all the game plan was good to go. And I'd let the kids watch back some of the pro games that happen over the weekends. And, I would turn the commentating off and have them commentate it. So it just kind of increases their game knowledge and reinforces a lot of those fundamentals and stuff like that. So, like we've talked about, a lot of these kiddos are going to be self-starters, and the veterans, you'll probably see them take some of the newer players under their wings. But something that we actually just recently released, and unfortunately the COVID situation, along with the dead period, kind of has prohibited Kentucky schools from heavily utilizing, but is the Scrimmage Feature. So Scrimmage Feature is really great because you can see, schools either in Kentucky or outside of Kentucky, and it'll even tell you who might be a good match. So if they show up to their matches, they're a similar win-loss to your teams, it'll show a percentage of, hey, Matt and Robert, they're like an 80% match, for their teams. You can suggest a scrimmage. So the big takeaway here is that you can be as hands-on as you want or need to be, or if you want to be as hands-off and let the kiddos run it and just kind of be the matchmaker, so to say, you can do that. And we want to help, support, either coach. So we're actually making what's called a coach academy. There's going to be a lot of really great, fundamentals that competitive and professional players are going to help coaches level themselves up. And it'd be great to also get some pro D hours. So we're trying to make it, compelling and rewarding for the players as well as the coaches. So just some stuff to look forward to.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Let's move into kind of the next section here, as far as what challenges have you seen being, the biggest things that you've had to overcome. Brandon, for you guys is a year one program, or Matt, is a more seasoned program. What are kind of the things that you've had to work around in the last year or two or three, and talk about how you found solutions and kind of work through those issues.
For us, once we got started, there wasn't a whole lot of issues. We were some of the technical stuff we were able to work around, but we found solutions for, as we were part of the technology department. So, the biggest thing was for us, I guess, was getting the kids to, how do you say that the right way. They had other activities they're involved in, and so because most of our kids were, the brainiacs, there were things that were conflict sometimes. We had to figure out how to work around those, and so we adjusted practice times and things like that to help work on that. So.
Yeah, I think as your program goes on, like some of the things you run into are funding. So trying to find some good fundraisers that you can do consistently. One of the problems I ran into as a coach in a small town was that, every team from every school was going to the same 12 to 20 businesses and asking for money. So finding some that, especially if you have some students whose parents own some small businesses or something like that, you think would be willing to donate that. Timothy Evans, the other Kentucky super coach for Play Versus, who's in Wolfe County, he has, I think, like his local Supercuts and a couple other like ice cream places and stuff like that sponsor jerseys for them. So that's one of the other things you run into, as well as, like, do you do jerseys? Do you do t-shirts? We went through Champion for that, which I think is what most people do. And theirs are fairly cheap. They're like $30 for a full color with a name on the back and a logo on the front. So I'd say fundraising is definitely an issue. And then you kind of run into, if you want it to be taken seriously as a team, you got to take it seriously as a team. So when kids would come up and say, hey, I got to miss a game today because I'm doing this, it's like, if you were playing basketball or football, you would not come to your coach and say, oh, I can't play Friday night. I have I have to take my dog to the groomer or something like that. So I think getting that mentality to change from, oh, it's just video games, to this is my sport, is also one of those challenges you overcome. And as your program's around longer, you're gonna be able to deal with that more readily. Tech issues, we never really had any. Just making sure that computers stay updated, and that like permissions and firewalls and things like that. So always testing those. Probably at least a day before competition is big. And then some of the other things to think that we had issues with from time were like snow days and stuff like that. So getting those makeup matches scheduled, and just communication with other coaches sometimes can be a little iffy, depending on how frequently they check their email. So
one thing to add to that too is logistical side. So, you know, if you guys go public with an announcement at the school, you will likely have what I had, and that was the next day I had kids lined up, you know, down the hallway outside of my office. So, you know, just it's a good problem to have, getting crushed by that initial response, and kind of sorting through, you know, what does an esport tryout look like? What does an esport practice look like? So, so those are just some things to kind of consider. And there's a bunch of super knowledgeable coaches like Matt and Timothy Evans, as well as other coaches in our Play Versus Discord, that you can ask those questions, and we have some resources that we can share with you to help navigate that. But one thing I wanted to tie in about the funding was that, you know, even though a title that students might be interested in might not be in the library just yet, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to turn those kids away. So I think Smash is a really great example. So I had a really, you know, large, you know, Smash community at my school. And we decided that let's give those kiddos a community still, but we can help, you know, kind of grow the esports program at the same time by hosting Smash tournaments at the school. You know, make it like $5 or $10 buy-in, sell some pizza, whatever the case is. But it's also a great way to give the kiddos a way to, you know, have some event management, or maybe you have a student that's passionate about making music or shoutcasting. They can do the whole thing. So esports can be a really symbiotic relationship, you know, with those communities, and even as well as traditional sports. You know, if the football team wants to host a Madden tournament, you know, the esports team could partner up with the football team and create that tournament and share in that fundraising to give them both a space. So just some things to consider, you know, when you're building out the program initially.
One of the fundraisers that we did, actually, it was one of the things I remembered from high school, is the FBLA club would always have you do a compatibility survey. So you'd answer like 30 questions, and they'd send it off to a company, and they'd match you, and you'd find like your crush who is a secret or something like that. So we did something like that, and we did it where you can buy your responses. You can buy it for $1 for your grade and $1 for the whole school. So I think we had 170 kids that bought both. So that's an easy $340 that we got there just from doing some spreadsheet manipulation and a Google form. So
the other thing too that I should mention in here is that there's a lot of grant opportunities out there for funding. You know, you guys kind of talked on the STEM tie-in and, you know, looking at machines that work for curriculum-based projects like AutoCAD or Photoshop, or, you know, some of the higher level machines that you would need in the classroom. There's a lot of grant funding out there to get those types of equipment. If you go to bitespeed.com under our resources tab, we actually have a link to, I think it's like 70 different grants that cover, you know, STEM education, you know, the whole works. And what we did at Bitespeed, you know, we actually wrote a Carl Perkins grant for VR. It's one of the largest funding sources nationwide for schools. We actually wrote that grant as an example that you can copy and paste from our website, put your information in, and then submit it. You know, it's not going to be a 2-minute process, but we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to find funding sources, and then doing things like, you know, the guys have mentioned here, going to your local businesses or taking the smaller steps to, you know, looking at the dollar signs. I think there's a lot of opportunity there if you do some digging and connect with some of the other successful programs. So.
One thing that I'd like to also add in, because I think it's an important thing to touch on, is addressing Title IX and kind of, you know, diversity in the program. So, you know, there's a pretty large stigma that, you know, oh, gaming and esports is only for the boys and stuff like that. And I think we're in a really interesting place to kind of reset that thinking. My sister was part of my program back home because she literally couldn't participate in any other, you know, sports. So I think that's something that you should heavily consider when, you know, building your program, is setting that culture of the team to be a place that you know, everyone can feel like they've got a place to be. So, you know, if you've got, you know, male or female student that's into social media management, boom, there's your social media manager, you know, for the team and stuff like that. So just try to keep an open mind and, you know, like I said, we're in a really, really great spot, you know, at the ground floor to kind of reset a lot of stigmas around gaming and that culture.
One of the questions that we saw in the chat was from Ken Young. He asked about other coaches getting frustrated that you're taking players from their sports and stuff. So I had just responded, in case you're not looking at the chat, Play Versus does have their seasons that run fall and spring. So the fall season goes October to December, and then playoffs are in January. And then the spring season goes from late February to April, and then the playoffs are in May. So that does provide opportunities. If a kid plays football or basketball or something, they can decide to play one season or the other. But I would say typically, like, the overlap that you're going to have with other sports and esports is going to be small. It may apply to a few students, but just in my personal experience, there weren't too many basketball players who were also, you know, gold or silver League of Legends players. You know what I mean? So it can be an issue, but I mean, ultimately, like, you wouldn't be hassling the bowling coach if some kid started to leave esports for his program or her program. So it's got to go both ways there. It's what's best for the students ultimately. So.
We've got about 9 minutes left, so I think now is a great time. If you have any other questions that we haven't covered today, please feel free to type them out. We'll get those answered. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, there will be an email sent out to all of the attendees after things are wrapped up here with a survey and a link to the recording, and we should be able to get that out to you hopefully today. And, you know, please feel free to reach out via email or phone to any of our panelists today if you have questions that don't get answered in the next, you know, 5-10 minutes.
I did add you guys all to unmute mics too. So if you guys are by a computer with a microphone and have a question, feel free to chime in that way as well. Yeah.
So I got a quick question. We're like at ground zero. You know, our one of our administrators came up to me and mentioned it to me, and at first I was kind of like, what somebody else said earlier, like esports. What is that? And so I think the vibe is there, and everyone is looking forward to it. I teach digital game design, so we've kind of like shifted the pendulum to want to do this. What did you guys do to get the parents buy-in? If at, you know, I'm sure gaming has a stigma, and I think we're doing better at debunking that. But did you get all the parents in and have like a meeting with them and told them, you know, we're not gonna fry their brains just playing games?
Yeah, so one of the first things I did, right when I had gotten approval from admin and athletic director to have a team, I think like 3 weeks out, I scheduled a parent meeting in the library of our school at like 6 o'clock at night. I had some snacks and stuff for everybody there. It was for parents, it was for students, it was for the teachers that wanted to know more about it, and kind of just talk through like what esports was, why we were doing it, and really talking about specifically the games involved. So we're not playing Call of Duty, we're not playing Counter-Strike, we're playing League of Legends, we're playing Rocket League. So these are games that are strategic and require a lot of communication and teamwork. And that's kind of what separates these games from other ones that the kids are probably playing at home that don't necessarily require that and have violence that's more central to their gameplay style. So.
And also, are the kids playing with like peers online, or is it, I want to make sure I address that with the parents, like they're not playing against these people, adults or anything like that around the world. Is it like peer-to-peer type environment?
Sure. Yeah, so I can answer that. So there's two leagues within a state. So if your school is in alignment with KHSA, then you would be competing against other schools that are also in alignment with KHSA. Whereas if you're not, you'd be put into a time zone based club league. But we hand verify each school to make sure that every coach is a verified staff member or volunteer. We use our API integrations into the game software itself to verify that a player is who they say they are. If a player, or someone that's not on that school's roster enters the match, we'll flag that match, reach out to both coaches, get clarification, and make a competitive ruling. But it is high school versus high school. And I think it's worth mentioning too, that you can have multiple teams at your school. So if you have like a large interest for one game over the other, you can do that. But yes, it is high school versus high school.
Great, thank you.
Yep. I also wanted to touch real quick on what Matt was talking about. I think it's a great example of tying a physical element into esports. There's a ton of research that supports those athletes and esports competitive players that are physically fit, have a better performance. So it could be a way to tie in some physical activity into what might be stigmatized as, a solitary activity and stuff like that. So just another thing to consider tying in. Also, there is a big distinction between gaming and esports. We kind of talked about that at the beginning, but what's great is that this is, assuming we're in a virus right now, it's at school under the supervision of a staff member. We get to set the narrative of what's right and what's wrong, as far as, being a good digital citizen and all that jazz. So just some other kind of arrows in your quiver for, whenever you're talking to admin and parents.
And to touch on the working out that I know I've mentioned and Seth just mentioned again, it doesn't have to be like weightlifting and all like running around a track and stuff like that. We ran around the upstairs of our gym, but we also, a lot of days we played dodgeball. We would play like freeze tag, or we play capture the flag. It was just something to get cardio, to get their heart rate up, to get them moving. I noticed they were working harder and sweating more when we were playing a game than they were when we were just doing push-ups, sit-ups, and running. But it's important to work out, and I think I would bring gym clothes with me, and I would run and work out with them and stuff. And it was a good way for us to bond as a team, and also a good way to prioritize our physical health as well as our mental. So
we just had an awesome question come in from Albert. We're having some issue getting females involved. My superintendent would love to have some girls join for equality, but they aren't coming out. Does anybody have female players, and is there a way to get them more interested?
So I'll jump on that. So I think so we had a VEX robotic program at my school, and there was also like a Girls Who Code program. So I think kind of making sure that everyone feels like they can have their own kind of space, so to say. So maybe one night you guys host like a girls in gaming event where like all the girls that want to come out and play games can have a place to do so, or just trying to get creative with how you're marketing the program within the school and kind of presenting it as a place where they can feel like, you know, they've got some place to belong and a community. So it's something that we're very passionate about, and you know, we do have projects in the works to promote some all-girls schools that have competed in the platform, and kind of, you know, get that out there, because I think part of it comes down to, you know, they just don't know that there's other girls out there that can do it, and show them that how they can do it. So yeah, so that's something we're working on as a company to do better about, and I think it's also something that, you know, each school and program can join into.
Awesome. We got about 1 minute left, so maybe one last question. Otherwise, I think I'm going to let these guys kind of say some final words before we get wrapped up here. Anybody else with a question for the panel?
I'll throw my email address into the chat here. If anyone has a question that might come up like immediately after we get off the call, or over the weekend, you can just shoot it over to me in an email. And you know, if you want to, you know, get on the phone and talk about specifics of your situation, or, you know, want to hear more about kind of what we were doing and stuff like that, I'd be happy to do so. So feel free. I'm an open book. I'll shoot you straight and share experiences from both sides of the equation.
Same goes for me. I mean, what I do every day now is try to get esports teams up and off the ground and going. So I could literally sit here and talk about esports all day. And where I'm not in the classroom anymore, I'm pretty flexible for any time you want to call on your planning or whenever you have time. So yeah, I put my email in there, and I saw that Brandon did as well. So
awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate the attendees for coming and learning more, and definitely thank you to the panelists, Matt, Brandon, and Seth. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and being so open about what you guys have done in the space. And you know, Tanner and I on the ByteSpeed side, we're always here to help. You know, if you need equipment or just, you know, want to talk shop about esports, that's you know, something that I do as my day job, which is kind of cool. So you know, we've got 5 people here that can be a great resource for you. And if we don't know the answer to your questions, we can get you in touch with those who do. So thanks everybody. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you at the next one.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.
thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.